The medical bay of the USS Theodore Roosevelt smelled like every hospital corridor in America. Antiseptic, sterile, the kind of clean that makes you forget people bleed. Master-at-Arms, Reese Kincaid sat on the edge of a diagnostic bed, her back straight as a rifle barrel. Her hands rested on her knees. Calm. Still. The way a stone rests at the bottom of a river, the overhead lights hummed their fluorescent hymn. Around her, half a dozen personnel waited in paper-thin gowns, scrolling phones, avoiding eye contact. Morning sick call, the routine grind of military medicine. Reese watched the door. She always watched the door. 24 paces to the nearest exit. 3 potential cover positions. 1 fire extinguisher mounted on the port bulkhead. Her eyes cataloged the space the way some people read the morning paper. Habit. Training. The kind of awareness that keeps you breathing when the world decides to catch fire. Petty Officer Jake Brennan approached with a data pad, his movements efficient but bored. 24 years old, fresh-faced, the kind of young that hasn't seen anything die yet. Kincaid Reese. Correct. Her voice was low, even, the kind of voice that doesn't ask for attention. Brennan swiped through her file, his brow furrowing slightly. Standard readiness physical. Bioscans. Neural baseline. The usual. Says here you transferred from Pearl Harbor. Admin section. Correct. He scrolled further, his frown deepening. 0 commendations, 0 demerits, not a single flag in 4 years of service. Too clean. The kind of record that makes you wonder what's been scrubbed. Okay, well, Brennan gestured vaguely toward the medical scanner. Standard procedure. We'll run the scans, check for microfractures, any neural degradation from shipboard duty. Need you to remove your uniform shirt. Reese nodded once. She began unfastening the high collar of her Navy working uniform. The fabric whispered in the quiet room. That's when the pneumatic door hissed open. The change in atmosphere was immediate, physical, like a cold front sweeping through. Every slouched shoulder in the room snapped vertical. Conversations died mid-sentence. Brennan's casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by rigid attention. Colonel Wade Thornton strode into the medical bay, 58 years old, 6'2". His uniform was tailored perfection, dark blue fabric decorated with ribbons that told stories most Americans only knew from CNN. Silver eagles glinted on his collar. His face was all hard angles and weathered granite, the kind of face carved by decisions that cost lives. 2 aides flanked him, both stone-faced and silent. Thornton's presence filled the space like smoke fills a closed room. He was conducting surprise inspections across the ship. Security, readiness. Ever since the classified document leak 3 months ago, the Roosevelt had been under a microscope. Standards were being questioned, heads were rolling. Margaret Caldwell, the chief medical officer, hurried to intercept him. 43 years old, competent, currently flustered. Colonel Thornton, this is unexpected. Thornton's eyes swept the room. They missed nothing. He cataloged equipment status, staff posture, the cowed expressions of waiting personnel. His gaze was a physical weight. Doctor. 1 word, no warmth in it. He picked up a data pad from a nearby console, scrolling through the duty roster with dismissive speed. His thumb moved like he was flicking away insects. Caldwell filled the silence, her voice tight. Readiness levels are at 94%, Colonel, well within operational parameters. Thornton stopped scrolling, his eyes fixed on a name. Kincaid Reese, Master-at-Arms, transfer from Pearl Harbor. He looked up, scanning the line of waiting crew. His gaze found her, settled on her, heavy as iron. He didn't speak to her. He spoke about her. His voice carried easily through the silent room. Pearl Harbor admin duty, that's where we send people to count staplers until they collect their pensions. The insult landed like a slap. Casual, thoughtless, the cruelty of absolute authority. Brennan flinched. Reese's expression didn't change. She simply met Thornton's gaze. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. She'd heard variations of this her entire career. Legacy hire, Admiral's pet, desk jockey playing soldier. Let them think it. Thornton continued, his voice dripping with disdain. Standards are slipping, Doctor, if this is the caliber of security personnel we're assigning to the flagship. Another legacy admission fast-tracked through the system because Daddy knew someone. The words hung in the air like smoke. Reese's jaw tightened. Just for a second, then gone. Back to stone. She meets all physical requirements, Colonel. Caldwell offered, her voice strained. Requirements are the bare minimum. Thornton tossed the datapad back onto the console with a clatter. The bare minimum doesn't keep this ship safe. It doesn't win wars. It just fills billets. He turned his attention back to Reese, his eyes cold as January. Proceed, petty officer. I want to see what fleet ready looks like these days. He didn't leave. He stood there, arms crossed, a silent, intimidating observer. He wanted to see for himself what passed for a qualified sailor in this new Navy, this softer Navy, this Navy that cared more about checking boxes than checking threats. The pressure in the room was immense. Brennan swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. Ma'am, he said, his voice now a strained whisper, your uniform. With the colonel's cold eyes fixed on her, Reese finally pulled the gray uniform shirt over her head. She folded it with parade ground precision and placed it on the edge of the bed. Then she turned to face the scanner. For a full second, there was only the hum of the ship. Then came the sharp intake of breath. Brennan's datapad nearly slipped from his hands. Dr. Caldwell's professional mask crumbled into slack-jawed shock. One of the aides behind Thornton let out a soft, involuntary sound. Thornton went rigid. The casual arrogance fell away from him like a dropped cloak, replaced by something else, something unnerving. A predatory stillness, the stillness of a man seeing a ghost. He took a step forward, then another. His eyes locked on Reese's back. Her skin was a roadmap of violence. From her shoulders down to her waist, a tapestry of scars was woven into her flesh. They weren't the clean, thin lines of surgical corrections. These were jagged, puckered, brutal. A starburst pattern of melted tissue bloomed over her left shoulder blade, the telltale signature of an IED blast close range, the kind that throws you 20 feet and leaves you wondering why you're still conscious. Deep parallel gouges ran diagonally across her spine, shrapnel, high-velocity fragments that had clawed through Kevlar and carved rivers in her back. A surgical scar ran along her lower ribs, precise and clean. Emergency field surgery, the kind that happens in the back of a helicopter while someone's screaming to stay awake. But it was the tattoo that held Thornton's attention. Nestled among the chaos of healed wounds inked in sharp black letters across her left shoulder blade were the words, Rangers lead the way. G&D Kincaid, 1993. The room had gone cemetery quiet. Thornton's voice, when he finally spoke, was low, dangerous, stripped of all condescension. Where did you get that name? He wasn't asking about the scars. He was asking about the ink. His tone wasn't curiosity. It was an accusation, a challenge. Reese didn't turn around. She simply stood there, her scarred back, a testament to a life he couldn't comprehend from her sanitized service record. Staff Sergeant Daniel Kincaid, 75th Ranger Regiment. Killed in action, Mogadishu, Somalia. October 3rd, 1993. Her voice was calm, even, but there was steel underneath. Bedrock. He was my father, sir. The words landed like artillery. Thornton staggered. Actually staggered. His hand reached out, grasping the edge of a nearby bed for support. His face had gone pale, white as hospital sheets. The years fell away from his eyes. 31 years collapsed into seconds. He was back there. Back in the heat, in the dust, in the screaming. Mogadishu, October 3rd, 1993. The day the world watched 18 Americans die on live television. The day the Black Hawks fell from the sky. The day the mission went to hell and dragged yet good men down with it. Thornton had been there. Captain Wade Thornton, Delta Force, Task Force Ranger. He'd been in the streets when the ambush closed like a steel trap. He'd fired his rifle until the barrel glowed red. He'd watched men bleed out on foreign soil while the enemy closed in like wolves. And he'd watched Danny Kincaid die. No, that wasn't right. Danny Kincaid had died so Wade Thornton could live. The memory hit him like a freight train. The alley, pinned down, Somali militia firing from every window, Thornton's legs shattered by a ricochet. He couldn't move, couldn't run. The ammunition was running dry. The radio was screaming for help that wasn't coming. Danny Kincaid, 27 years old, eyes wild with adrenaline and fear, and that terrible, beautiful courage that only exists in men who know they're about to die. Wade, get up, move. Danny dragging him, hauling him by his vest, rounds snapping past their heads like angry hornets. The Humvee was 30 yards away. Might as well have been 30 miles. Danny's voice in his ear, hoarse and urgent. You're gonna make it, Wade. You hear me? You're gonna make it. We both are. No. Danny's voice was certain, final. My daughter needs you to survive. You're gonna live. You're gonna tell her I loved her. And then Danny turned around, turned his back on the Humvee, on safety, on survival. He stood in that alley and he fired, magazine after magazine, buying seconds with bullets, buying Wade's life with his own. The explosion came from everywhere and nowhere. RPG round, direct hit. The world went white. When Wade's vision cleared, Danny was gone. Just gone. Nothing left but scorched earth and smoke. They never found enough of him to send home. Thornton had lived with that debt for 31 years, carried it like a stone in his chest. Every promotion, every medal, every breath, all bought with Danny Kincaid's blood. And now Danny's daughter stood in front of him, scarred like a combat veteran, tattooed with her father's unit, looking at him with those same dark, unreadable eyes. Sir, Reese's voice cut through his flashback. Calm, patient, waiting. Thornton blinked. His hand was shaking. He pulled it away from the bed, clenched it into a fist to stop the tremor. You're Danny's daughter. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of impossible fact. Yes, sir. He talked about you that night, the night before, when Thornton's voice cracked. He showed me a picture. You were just a baby, 6 months old. I was 6 months and 12 days old when he died, sir. The precision of it, the way she said it, like she'd counted every day of her life from that moment forward. Thornton looked at her scars again, at the marks of war etched into her skin. Where did you get those? Kandahar, Kabul, the places the news doesn't cover anymore. She turned to face him now. Her eyes met his directly. Places where people still need rangers, sir, even if they don't wear the tab. Understanding dawned. She hadn't joined the Navy for a career. She'd joined to walk in her father's footsteps, to understand the world that had taken him from her, to become what he'd been. A protector, a guardian, a sheepdog in a world full of wolves. The admin duty at Pearl Harbor, the too clean record. It wasn't incompetence. It was camouflage. She'd been somewhere, done something. Things that got scrubbed from official files. Thornton's mouth opened, to say what he didn't know, to apologize, to explain, to bridge 31 years of silence and guilt. But the universe had other plans. It began not with a bang, but with a lurch. A deep, resonant groan vibrated through the deck plates, the sound of metal being stressed beyond its design limits, the kind of sound that ship's engineers hear in nightmares. The lights flickered, once, twice, then died. Emergency strobes kicked in, bathing everything in pulsing red. An alarm began to wail, high-pitched and insistent, the sound designed to trigger panic at a primal level. Then came the impact. The concussive wave slammed through the hull like the fist of God. This wasn't the distant thump of ship-to-ship combat. This was intimate, brutal. The violence of something exploding inside the Roosevelt's skin. The entire bay convulsed. Diagnostic machines tore free from their moorings. The medical scanner Reese was standing beside collapsed with a deafening shriek of rending metal. Equipment became projectiles. Surgical trays became shrapnel. Petty Officer Brennan was thrown against a supply cabinet, his head connected with the corner edge. A sickening crack, he crumpled. Dr. Caldwell's aide, a young woman whose name Thornton couldn't remember, was standing too close to the porthole. The reinforced glass shattered inward. The sudden depressurization caught her. For one terrible second, she hung there, suspended between life and death. Then she was gone, sucked through the opening into the cold waters of Norfolk Bay. Thornton's training kicked in too late. The blast wave caught him sideways. His body went airborne. Physics took over. Mass times acceleration equals pain. He hit the base of a diagnostic bed hard. His head bounced off steel. Stars exploded across his vision. Blood, hot and immediate, ran from his temple. His other aide disappeared under a cascade of sparking debris, pinned, possibly dead. The world dissolved into chaos, screaming alarms, hissing pipes, voices shouting orders that no one could hear over the cacophony, the acrid stink of electrical fires and burning insulation. The main blast door to the corridor buckled inward. Its frame glowed cherry red, melting. Then the emergency protocols kicked in. Magnetic locks engaged with a series of heavy thunks. The doors sealed, hermetically, completely. They were trapped. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, chaos reigned absolute. Dr. Caldwell stumbled through the strobing red darkness, blood running from a gash on her forehead. She was shouting something. Medical jargon, triage protocols. Her voice couldn't penetrate the din. The other patients were either unconscious or screaming, their minor ailments forgotten in the face of immediate violent death. Thornton pushed himself up onto one elbow. His head was ringing. His vision swam. He tasted copper, blood. His mouth was full of it. His entire worldview had just been shattered. The order he cherished, the chain of command he'd served for 36 years, gone, replaced by primal chaos. The fight for survival stripped down to its brutal essentials. He tried to focus, to assess, to command, but his body wasn't responding correctly. Concussion, probably severe. He needed to get up, needed to take control, needed to, a hand pressed against his chest, firm, authoritative. "Sir, stay down." Reese's voice, calm as a lake at dawn. Thornton looked up. His vision was still swimming, but he could see her clearly enough. She was on one knee beside him. The explosion had thrown her forward, but she'd twisted in midair, absorbed the impact with a trained roll, came up in a combat crouch. The kind of movement that takes thousands of hours to learn, to internalize, to make instinct. The strobing red lights cast shifting shadows across her scarred back. But her face had changed, and the mask of calm neutrality was gone, burned away. What remained underneath was hard, ancient, the face of someone who'd seen this before, survived this before, someone who knew exactly what to do when the world caught fire. Her eyes swept the room, not in panic, in assessment, cover, concealment, threats, escape routes. The tactical calculus running behind her eyes at computer speed. "Sir." Her voice was different now, clipped, authoritative, no deference. "I need you to stay conscious and stay down. Do you understand?" Thornton tried to speak. His tongue felt thick. Wrong. "Do you understand?" More insistent. He managed a nod. "Good. Don't move." She was already gone, moving through the chaos like a ghost through smoke. Thornton watched his concussed brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Reese ignored the screaming, ignored the alarms, ignored the fire starting to lick at exposed power conduits. She moved with brutal efficiency. Purpose. Every motion economical. Practiced. First Brennan. She lunged to where he lay, slumped against the cabinet, unconscious, bleeding from the head. Her fingers went to his neck, found his pulse. Strong but thready. Good enough. She ripped a strip of fabric from a nearby bedsheet. Not gentle, functional. Wrapped it around his head wound, applied direct pressure. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't comfortable, but it would keep his brain inside his skull long enough to matter. Next, the fire. An electrical panel was sparking violently, each spark like a miniature firework. In an enclosed space with limited oxygen, that fire would consume them within minutes. Smoke inhalation would kill them before the flames ever touched skin. Reese grabbed a CO2 extinguisher from the wall mount, didn't fumble, didn't hesitate, slammed the base against the panel to break the locking mechanism. A cloud of frigid white gas blanketed the electrical fire. The crackling stopped. The flames died. One threat neutralized. Our Caldwell was fumbling with a communications panel, her hands shaking, blood in her eyes. She was trying to establish contact with the bridge, with damage control, with anyone. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Medical Bay." "Stop." One word, razor sharp. Caldwell froze, turned to look at Reese. In the strobing red light, the young woman looked like something from a war film. Blood-streaked, scarred, eyes burning with focus. Broadcasting on an open channel during a potential boarding action is suicide, Reese said. Her voice was low, urgent. You'll just give them our position. Them, Caldwell's voice cracked. Who's them? What's happening? Reese didn't answer. She was already moving again. Surveying the survivors, making calculations that would have taken a committee hours to debate. She made them in seconds. 2 patients were dead, necks broken in the blast, nothing to be done. A third was alive but trapped under a collapsed section of equipment. His leg was crushed, compound fracture, bone visible through torn flesh. He was screaming, the kind of screaming that comes from a place beyond pain. Reese gave him a long professional look, assessed the injury, assessed the resources, assessed the probability of survival. She made a decision. She moved on. Triage. Brutal. Necessary. The injured man screaming followed her through the bay. Thornton watched all of this from his position on the deck. His head was clearing, the shock wearing off, being replaced by something else. Recognition. Understanding. This wasn't a master-at-arms from Pearl Harbor admin duty. This was a soldier, a warrior, someone who'd been forged in the same fires that had taken Danny Kincaid. Every movement she made spoke of training. Real training, the kind you don't get in Navy boot camp. The kind you get in places with names you can't say and missions that don't officially exist. A loud metallic screech echoed from the sealed blast door. The sound of industrial cutting, plasma torch probably, carving through reinforced steel like butter. Reese's head snapped toward the sound. Her body language changed, shifted, from responder to defender, from protector to predator. They're through in 90 seconds, she stated. Her voice was cold, factual. No fear in it, just calculation. Thornton found his voice. Whoever put a bomb on this ship? Reese's eyes scanned the wrecked bay, her mind working, processing options at inhuman speed. Assume hostile, assume organized, assume we're on our own. She looked around at the ruined equipment, the trapped survivors, the sealed exits. A tactical nightmare. They were boxed in, outnumbered, outgunned. Most people would panic. Most people would freeze. Reese Kincaid smiled, not a happy smile, a predator's smile. The smile of someone who'd been in worse situations and walked out through the bodies of her enemies. Her gaze fell on a high-pressure line, medical gas distribution, oxygen, nitrogen. The line was ruptured, hissing faintly. Dangerous. Volatile. An idea formed behind her eyes. Desperate. Lethal. She grabbed a length of cable from the floor, once used to secure the diagnostic imager. She stripped one end with a shard of broken glass, exposing the wires. Her hands moved with practiced speed, muscle memory from 100 field expedients in 100 different hellholes. Dr. Reese's voice cut through Caldwell's shock. I need every flammable anesthetic and sterilizing agent you have. Now. Caldwell stared at her, comprehension struggling through the fog of trauma. Now, doctor, Caldwell scrambled toward a locked medical cabinet. Her hands shook as she entered the access code. Thornton finally pulled himself upright. His head was pounding. His vision was clearing, but his balance was still off. He leaned against the bed, forced his brain to function, to assess, to lead. Petty Officer Kincaid. She didn't stop working, didn't look at him, ignored him. What's your plan? The plan is not to die in this room, sir. Her hands moved with blinding speed. She was building something, a device, improvised, deadly. V-bags filled with flammable agents, taped to the oxygen canister. The stripped wires connected to something she'd pulled from her pocket. A small electronic device, a detonator from somewhere. Where the hell had she gotten a detonator? Thornton's mind struggled to keep up, to process, to reconcile the woman in front of him with the file he'd read, with his assumptions, his prejudices. There are 2 kinds of people in a crisis, Colonel Reese said, not looking up from her work. Her voice was conversational, almost gentle. Those who make a plan and those who get in the way of the plan. She secured the last connection, tested it, nodded to herself. Then she looked up at him. Her dark eyes met his. In them, he saw Danny Kincaid. the same intensity, the same unshakable resolve, the same willingness to do what was necessary. Decide which one you are, sir. The cutting torch screeched louder. Sparks showered through a growing hole in the blast door. 60 seconds, maybe less. Thornton stared at her, at this woman he'd dismissed, this soldier he'd insulted, this daughter of his dead brother in arms. For the first time in 20 years, Colonel Wade Thornton was not the one in command. And somehow, impossibly, that felt right. He pushed himself fully upright, steadied himself. His head still throbbed, but his vision was clear. His mind was sharp. "What do you need me to do?" Reese allowed herself the smallest ghost of a smile. "When they breach, stay behind me. When I move, you provide covering fire. Can you do that?" Thornton's hand instinctively went to his hip. His sidearm was still holstered. Secure, a 9mm Beretta, 15 rounds. He'd qualified expert with it every year for 3 decades. But qualification ranges don't smell like smoke and death. Don't have your dead friend's daughter calling the shots. "Yes." "Good." Reese positioned her improvised bomb near the ruptured gas line, concealed it behind wreckage. Armed the detonator. A small green light blinked to life, malevolent in the red darkness. She moved to cover, gestured for Thornton to follow. They crouched behind an overturned bed. The metal frame wouldn't stop bullets, but it would hide them for a few critical seconds. Dr. Caldwell and the conscious patients huddled in the far corner, trying to make themselves small, invisible, praying to gods they'd forgotten in peacetime. The cutting torch completed its circle. A section of the blast door, glowing orange-hot, fell inward with a heavy clang. Sparks scattered across the deck. Silence. Heavy, pregnant with violence. Then the barrel of a rifle poked through the opening, followed by a helmet, followed by 2 men in black tactical gear. No insignia, no identification. Professional. Organized. Wrong. Everything about them was wrong. Reese's thumb hovered over the detonator. Her breathing was slow, controlled, her heart rate barely elevated. The calm of someone who'd done this before, many times before. Thornton watched her, this woman who'd transformed from clerk to warrior in the space of a heartbeat. This guardian who carried her father's name on her skin. The operatives dropped into the bay, light as cats, rifles sweeping, searching for targets. They saw Dr. Caldwell. The wounded patients, easy prey. What they didn't see was the woman in the shadows. Reese's finger tightened on the detonator. She looked at Thornton one last time. Her eyes asked a question, the same question Danny Kincaid had asked 31 years ago in a Mogadishu alley. "Do you trust me?" Thornton nodded. Reese pressed the button, and the world exploded into fire. The detonator sent an electric pulse through the stripped wires. The spark hit the oxygen canister. Chemistry took over from there. Pure oxygen meeting aerosolized anesthetic. The nitrogen coolant from the ruptured line creating a volatile cocktail. All of it waiting, hungry. The spark gave it life. What happened next wasn't an explosion in the traditional sense. It was a fuel-air detonation. The air itself became a weapon. The atmosphere in the medical bay didn't just burn, it detonated. For a split second, the room was illuminated with the light of a miniature sun. White hot, blinding. The kind of light that burns after images into your retinas for hours. The 2 operatives who'd just dropped through the breach never had time to process what was happening. 1 second they were sweeping for targets. The next they ceased to exist. Their tactical gear vaporized, their bodies converted to ash and memory in less time than it takes a heart to beat. The pressure wave expanded outward in a perfect sphere, invisible, unstoppable. It hit the other operatives still clustered at the breach point, threw them backward into the corridor like rag dolls tossed by an angry child. Their armor cooked them from the inside, superheated metal against flesh. They were dead before they hit the deck. The wave slammed into Reese and Thornton even behind cover. It felt like being hit by a wall, a solid, invisible wall traveling at the speed of sound. The air was stolen from their lungs, ribs compressed, eardrums screamed. Then came the vacuum, the air rushing back in to fill the void, creating a second pulling pressure wave. Heat seared exposed skin. The temperature in the base spiked to over 1,000 degrees for a heartbeat. When Thornton dared to look up, the scene was biblical, apocalyptic. The center of the medical bay was a blackened crater, melted. The deck plates had warped from the heat. What remained of the operatives was little more than carbonized shadows on the bulkheads, dark silhouettes, permanent ghosts. The fire was already dying, starving itself out, consuming all available oxygen and then suffocating on its own success. Thick, acrid smoke hung in the air, the smell of burnt plastic and worse things. In the ringing silence that followed, Thornton became aware of several things simultaneously. His ears were bleeding, both of them, ruptured eardrums from the overpressure. The world sounded like he was underwater, muffled, distant. His exposed skin was seared, first-degree burns on his face and hands. It hurt, would hurt worse later. He was alive, and so was Reese. She was already on her feet. The rifle she'd stripped from the first dead operative was in her hands, at the ready. Her eyes scanning the smoldering doorway for new threats. A thin trickle of blood ran from her nose. Barotrauma. But otherwise she seemed completely unfazed. She moved to the breach point, stepped over carbonized remains without hesitation, checked the corridor beyond. Clear. For now. Colonel, her voice was barely audible over the ringing in his ears. We need to move. That noise will bring more. Thornton pushed himself up. His body was a symphony of pain, but pain meant alive. He'd take alive. Brennan, Reese had already moved to the young corpsman. She checked his pulse. Still strong, slapped his face lightly. Brennan, wake up, now. His eyes fluttered open, confused, terrified. He tried to sit up and immediately vomited. Concussion, definitely concussion. Can you walk? I think so. Then you will, doctor. Reese turned to Caldwell, who was still huddled in the corner staring at the carnage with wide, shocked eyes. Dr. Caldwell, I need you functional. Can you be functional? Caldwell nodded slowly, like a puppet on strings. Good, grab a medical kit. Full trauma. We're going mobile. Reese moved through the bay with purpose. Stripped ammunition from the dead, found a sidearm, checked it, holstered it, found a combat knife, tested the edge, strapped it to her thigh. Every movement was practiced. Efficient. The movements of someone who'd done this before in worse places. She found a tactical vest on one of the bodies, less melted than the others, pulled it on over her bare torso. It hung loose, but it would do. Gave her pockets, places for ammunition, tools. Thornton watched her work. This woman who'd been dismissed as a clerk, who'd endured his insults with quiet dignity. She was now the most dangerous person in the room, possibly on the entire ship. Petty Officer Kincaid, she looked at him. Where did you learn this? A flicker of something crossed her face, not quite a smile, more like the acknowledgement of a secret. Fallujah, Ramadi, Mosul, places where the rules changed. She slung an ammunition bandolier across her chest. Places where being Danny Kincaid's daughter meant I had something to prove. Every single day. Understanding clicked. She hadn't been Navy her whole career. There were gaps in her file, years unaccounted for, black spaces where official records stopped and unofficial actions began. She'd been a contractor, or something like it. Places where women couldn't officially serve in combat roles, so they called them something else, gave them different titles, sent them to do the same jobs as the men, to bleed the same, die the same. Colonel, with respect, we can do the full debrief if we survive the next hour. Right now, we move. She was right. The tactical situation was deteriorating by the second. They needed to get out of the kill box, get to a defendable position, get help. Where secondary control, engineering, 3 decks down. If they hit the ship, they'll want to finish it. Reactor scram or meltdown. That's the play. That's also where they'll expect us to go. Yes, sir, which is why we don't take the corridors. She pointed upward with the barrel of her rifle, to a maintenance hatch in the ceiling, partially dislodged from the explosion. We go through the guts. The ship's maintenance tunnels, the labyrinth of access passages, cable runs, and pipe chases that ran through the Roosevelt superstructure like veins through a body. Cramped, dark, dangerous. Perfect. Doctor, you first, then Brennan. Colonel, you bring up the rear. Keep your eyes open. These access ways connect everywhere. They might have the same idea. Reese didn't wait for acknowledgement. She pulled herself up into the darkness, disappeared like smoke. Caldwell followed. Then Brennan moving slowly, one hand pressed to his bandaged head. Thornton took one last look at the medical bay, at the carnage, at the shadows burned into the walls. Then he pulled himself up into the darkness and left the light behind. The maintenance tunnel was exactly as bad as Thornton had imagined. Worse, actually. Narrow, barely wide enough for a grown man to crawl through. The walls were lined with thick bundles of cables, power conduits, data lines, the ship's nervous system exposed and vulnerable. Pipes ran overhead, some cold, some radiating heat that turned the tunnel into an oven. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of ozone and hot metal. Every groan of the damaged ship's frame sounded amplified in the confined space, like being inside the rib cage of a dying animal. They moved in single file. Reese led. Her movements were sure, confident, like she'd memorized the ship's blueprint. Maybe she had. Maybe that's what Danny Kincaid's daughter did. Prepared, studied, left nothing to chance. Thornton brought up the rear. His shoulder brushed the tunnel wall. His breathing was loud in his own ears. Claustrophobia clawed at the edges of his mind. He was used to command bridges, to spacious operation centers, to having room to breathe and think. This was different. This was being buried alive with the enemy hunting you. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, Reese held up a fist. Stop! Everyone froze. Silence, except for the hum of power relays, the distant thrum of the ship's damaged systems trying to keep functioning. Then Thornton heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic. Armored boots on deck plating. Directly below them in the corridor they were crawling over. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Searching. Reese pressed herself flat, made herself small. Everyone else did the same. Barely breathing. Waiting. The footsteps passed beneath them. Faded. Gone. Reese waited another 30 seconds, then moved forward again. Twice more they stopped. Twice more hostiles passed below them. The ship was crawling with them. How many 10-20 enough to take over a carrier? Enough to make this a very bad day. Thornton's mind raced. Who were they? How had they gotten aboard? The Roosevelt was one of the most secure vessels in the Navy. Multiple checkpoints, ID scanners, armed security at every entrance. Unless they'd had help. Inside help. Someone with access, credentials, authority. The thought was cold water down his spine. Reese stopped again. This time she didn't signal danger. She'd reached their destination. A grated panel, below it dim emergency lighting, the soft hum of different machinery. They were above the engineering sublevel. Auxiliary control. Reese carefully pried up the grate. The metal protested quietly. She paused, listened, then opened it fully. She looked down into the space below. Her face was unreadable in the darkness. Colonel, forward. Thornton crawled up beside her, looked down. His blood froze. The engineering bay was chaos. Technicians in grease-stained jumpsuits were either dead on the deck or huddled against the bulkheads. Hands zip-tied, heads down, defeated. A dozen operatives in black tactical gear held the room. Rifles trained on the prisoners. Professional, disciplined, not panicking despite losing contact with their assault team at the medical bay. But it was the man at the reactor console that made Thornton's breath stop. Tall, 60 years old maybe, gray hair cut military short, red command insignia on his helmet, moving with the confidence of someone who'd been in 100 operations just like this. He was barking orders, interfacing with the console. His voice carried clearly in the cavernous space. The voice. Thornton knew that voice, knew it like he knew his own, knew it from 1,000 briefings and 100 firefights and one terrible night in Mogadishu when everything went to hell. Marcus. The name came out as a whisper, barely audible, but in the confined space of the maintenance tunnel it carried. Reese's head snapped toward him, her eyes locked on his. Questions there, urgent questions. You know him? Thornton couldn't speak. His throat had closed. 31 years collapsed into a single point, a singularity of pain and guilt and rage. Marcus Hale, Captain Marcus Hale as he'd been then, Delta Force Task Force Ranger, the unit's intelligence officer, The man who'd planned the Mogadishu raid. The man who'd assured them the intelligence was solid. The target confirmed. The mission clean. The man who'd betrayed them all. Colonel? Reese's voice was sharp, insistent. You know him? How? Thornton forced his lungs to work, forced words through the constriction in his throat. Task Force Ranger, Mogadishu. He was on our team. He saw understanding dawn in Reese's eyes, saw the pieces click together, saw her reach the same conclusion he had 31 years too late. He sold you out. Yes. The word was broken glass in his mouth. It all made sense now. The ambush, the perfect setup, how the Somali militia had known exactly where they'd be, exactly when, how they'd had RPGs positioned, heavy weapons, enough fighters to turn a 30-minute raid into an 18-hour siege. Someone had told them. Someone had given them the playbook. Marcus Hale. Your father found out, Thornton said. His voice was hollow, empty. Danny was going through comms logs. After the first Black Hawk went down, he found encrypted transmissions, outgoing during the operation. He confronted Marcus. Reese's jaw was tight, her knuckles white on the rifle. What happened? The street fight, when we were pinned down. I was wounded. Danny was getting me to the Humvee. Marcus was supposed to be covering our six. Thornton's eyes were distant, seeing that alley again, that terrible alley. But he wasn't shooting at the Somalis. He fired at Danny. 3 rounds, center mass. Danny's vest caught 2. The third went through his side. The words were coming faster now. 31 years of poison finally lancing. Danny went down. Marcus walked up to him. I saw it. I was 20 feet away and I couldn't move and I saw it. Marcus stood over him and fired 1 more round. Into his head. Execution. Reese's breathing had changed, fast, controlled. The breathing of someone trying very hard not to explode. The RPG hit seconds later. Thornton continued. Marcus disappeared in the blast. We thought he was dead. Vaporized. His body was never recovered. Never ID'd. Just gone. But he wasn't dead. No, he was smart. Used the chaos to disappear. Probably had exfil arranged with whoever was paying him. Saddam Hussein, the Russians, whoever wanted Americans dead in Somalia bad enough to pay for it. Thornton looked at Reese, at Danny's daughter, at the woman who'd inherited her father's courage and his enemies. I couldn't prove it. No evidence. No body. Just the word of a wounded soldier who'd been concussed and bleeding. They wrote Danny up as KIA enemy action, gave him a flag and a folded uniform, and sent him home in a box. And you said nothing. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact, heavy as iron. I said everything, filed reports, demanded investigations. They stonewalled me, told me combat stress, told me survivor's guilt, told me to accept my silver star and move on. His voice cracked. So I did. I moved on. I climbed the ranks. I survived, and Danny's memory got buried under 31 years of official lies. Silence hung between them. Heavy, absolute. When Reese spoke, her voice was ice. Not anymore. She moved to the edge of the grate, started to lower herself down. Thornton grabbed her arm. Reese, wait, we need a plan. There are 12 of them, 2 of us. We need to... I have a plan, Colonel. Which is, she looked at him. Her eyes were her father's eyes. Dark, determined, unbreakable. I'm going to kill every single one of them. And then I'm going to make Marcus Hale tell the truth before I put him in the ground next to my father. Reese, you can help or you can hide. Your choice, sir. She pulled free of his grip, began lowering herself down. Thornton looked at Brennan and Caldwell, both staring at him, waiting for leadership, for command, for someone to make the decision. He looked back down at the engineering bay, at Marcus Hale, the man who'd murdered his best friend and stolen 31 years of truth. The decision wasn't hard. He pulled out his sidearm, checked the chamber. 15 rounds, not enough. Would have to be enough. Stay here, he told the others. Don't move. Don't make noise. Understand. They nodded. Thornton swung himself down through the grate, dropped 8 feet, landed in a crouch beside Reese. His knees protested. Age, injury, didn't matter. Reese gave him a look. Surprise, maybe respect. Weapons tight until I make the first move, she whispered. When I start, you suppress the leader. Keep him off that console. Don't let him complete whatever he's doing. The rest are mine. Reese, there are 12 of them. I know, I counted. Before he could respond, she was moving. The engineering sublevel was a maze of machinery, reactor monitoring stations, power distribution nodes, coolant systems. Reese used it all for cover, moved like smoke through the mechanical landscape. Thornton followed, tried to keep up, tried to move quietly. His age and injuries made him clumsy. Every step felt too loud, too obvious, but the operatives were focused on Hale, on the console, on the hostages. They weren't expecting Ghost to drop from the ceiling. Reese positioned herself on a high catwalk, overlooking the main floor. The reactor console was directly below. Hale was hunched over it, typing rapidly, lines of code scrolling across screens, a timer displayed prominently. 38 minutes, counting down, reactor meltdown sequence, full core breach, enough to vaporize the Roosevelt, to irradiate Norfolk Bay, to turn a naval base into Chernobyl. This wasn't a raid, it was a terror attack. Mass casualty, maximum chaos. Thornton positioned himself adjacent to Reese, sighted down his pistol, aimed at Hale's center mass. His hands were steady. Strange. After everything, his hands were steady. Reese caught his eye, pointed to herself, then pointed down, then held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. She fired, not at a person, at a valve, a large primary control valve on a steam distribution line running along the bulkhead. The high-caliber round punched through reinforced metal like it was paper. The valve ruptured, catastrophically. Superheated steam erupted into the engineering bay, a jet of white fog under immense pressure. The temperature in the room spiked instantly. The steam filled the space like an instant fog bank. Visibility dropped to 0 in seconds. The operatives shouted. Confusion, surprise. Their formation broke. Training took over. They sought cover, tried to regroup, but they couldn't see, couldn't coordinate. Thornton opened fire, aimed at where Hale had been standing. 3 rounds, rapid, controlled. 1 hit. He saw Hale spin, grab his shoulder, go down behind the console. Then Reese dropped from the catwalk, 10 feet straight down, landed in a combat crouch, rose like death in the mist. What happened next would stay with Thornton for the rest of his life. Reese moved through the steam like it was her natural element, like she could see through it. Maybe she could. Maybe that's what years of combat taught you, to navigate chaos, to find clarity in violence. The silenced pistol she'd taken from the dead operative coughed twice. 2 operatives fell. Clean headshots. They never saw her coming. She was already moving. A 3rd hostile emerged from the steam, rifle up, searching. Reese was inside his guard before he could pull the trigger. The combat knife appeared in her hand. Fast, economical. Found the gap between helmet and vest. His throat opened. Hot blood mixed with hot steam, 4 down. The remaining operatives were shouting now, panic creeping into their voices. They were firing blind, rounds sparking off machinery. Dangerous, wild. Reese used their panic, used their fear. She became a ghost story, a nightmare, moving through the steam, taking them one by one. A 4th man. She swept his leg. He went down. She was on top of him. 2 rapid strikes to the face. His helmet cracked. Then she took his rifle and used it like a club. Once, twice. He stopped moving, 5 down. A 5th found her, actually saw her, brought his weapon to bear, got off 1 round. It went wide. Reese closed the distance, grabbed the rifle barrel, twisted, yanked him off balance, drove her knee into his groin, then his throat. He collapsed, gasping. She took his sidearm and put 2 rounds in him without looking. 6 down. The steam was beginning to clear, emergency ventilation kicking in, drawing the fog out, creating eddies and pockets of visibility. The remaining operatives had regrouped, 7 of them, clustered near the main entrance. Defensive formation, professional again. The initial panic controlled. They'd found Reese, had her in their sights. This should have been where it ended. 7 rifles against 1 woman. Math doesn't lie, but math doesn't account for rage, for purpose. for a daughter avenging her father. Reese pulled a cylindrical object from the vest she'd taken. Concussion grenade. She armed it, threw it, not at the operatives, at the ceiling directly above them. The grenade detonated with a deafening boom. Pure concussive force. No shrapnel, just pressure. A large section of ceiling already weakened by the Roosevelt's battle damage collapsed. Tons of metal and wiring and equipment came down like the wrath of God, buried the clustered operatives under an avalanche of debris. The crash was enormous. Final. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of escaping steam and the groan of settling metal. Reese walked calmly through the wreckage, putting single shots into anything that moved. Clinical, efficient, making sure. Thornton lowered his pistol. His hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from awe, from horror, from the sudden, terrible understanding that he'd just watched someone wage a one-woman war and win. She'd killed 7 trained operatives in 90 seconds. Solo. In near-zero visibility, without taking a single hit. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. This was someone who'd done this so many times it had become reflex. Instinct. Art. Clear, Reese called out. Her voice was calm, steady, like she'd just finished a training exercise. Thornton moved down from his position, stepped carefully through the debris field, checked the fallen. All dead. 12 hostiles neutralized. The engineering crew was alive. Traumatized, but alive. Reese was already at the reactor console, her rifle slung, her hands on the keyboard, examining the meltdown sequence Hale had initiated. Hale. Thornton spun. Where was Hale? He'd been hit. Gone down. But a scraping sound, metal on metal. Hale emerged from behind a power distribution node. Wounded. His shoulder bleeding badly. But alive. His sidearm in his good hand. Aimed at Reese's back. Reese down, Thornton's shout. His pistol coming up. But there was another shooter, one they'd missed. One who'd been buried in the debris but not killed. Emerging from the wreckage. Rifle rising, aimed at Reese. Thornton didn't think. Didn't calculate. 31 years of debt demanded payment. He threw himself in front of Reese. The rifle cracked. Once. The round hit Thornton in the shoulder. High, near the collarbone. The impact spun him. He felt his pistol fly from his hand. Felt his legs give out. Felt the deck rush up to meet him. Pain. White hot. Absolute. But alive. He was alive. And Reese was safe. Everything slowed down, turned crystalline. He saw Reese spin, saw her pistol come up, saw her fire twice. Center mass. The hidden shooter dropped. She turned, saw Thornton on the ground, saw the blood. Her face transformed, not into fear, into fury, pure, incandescent. Hale was laughing, wet, pained, but laughing. Kincaid's daughter, poetic, just like your father, playing hero. Reese's pistol swung toward him, her finger on the trigger, 3 pounds of pressure from ending him. Your father was a Boy Scout, Hale said, blood on his teeth. Couldn't understand the game, the real game, where nations use soldiers like chess pieces and throw them away when they're inconvenient. He coughed, bloody, but kept talking. I didn't work alone, little girl. Pentagon wanted Somalia to fail, wanted justification to pull out, to abandon the mission. Your father and 17 others were sacrificial lambs. I just expedited the schedule, made it convincing. Reese's hand was shaking, the pistol wavering. Her jaw clenched so tight Thornton could see the muscles jumping. I should thank you, Hale continued. That silver star, I got the one for heroism in Mogadishu bought with your father's blood. Funded a very comfortable retirement until this opportunity came along. Reese, Thornton's voice. Weak, but clear. Don't. She didn't look at him, couldn't take her eyes off Hale. He killed my father. He killed 17 soldiers. He's a traitor. Yes, and he'll answer for it. In a courtroom, in front of the world, in front of everyone who needs to know the truth. Thornton pushed himself up on one elbow, blood running down his chest. But not like this, not execution. That makes you what he is, a murderer. And you're better than that. Your father was better than that. Reese's finger tightened on the trigger. Hale closed his eyes, accepting, maybe even welcoming it. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then Reese lowered the pistol, reversed her grip, slammed the butt into Hale's temple. He collapsed, unconscious. She stood over him, breathing hard, hands shaking, the rage slowly draining, leaving behind something else, something like peace among. "For you, Dad," she whispered. "Justice, not revenge." Then she turned to Thornton, dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands were on his wound, applying pressure, efficient, professional. But her eyes were different, softer, concerned. "Stay with me, Colonel. You don't get today. Not after 31 years. Not after you finally did the right thing." Thornton smiled. It hurt. Everything hurt. But it was a good hurt, clean hurt, the hurt of paying a debt. "Your father would be proud of you. He'd be proud of both of us." The reactor console was beeping, insistent, urgent, the meltdown timer. Still counting down. Reese looked at it, at the code, at the encryption Hale had implemented. "Can you abort it?" Thornton asked. "I can try." She moved to the console, her hands flying over the keyboard, lines of code scrolling, the timer ticking down. 32 minutes. 31. 30. The engineering crew was emerging from cover, shocked, traumatized, but seeing hope, seeing someone fighting for them. And Reese worked. Thornton watched. His vision was starting to gray at the edges. Blood loss, shock. He fought to stay conscious, to witness this, to see Danny Kincaid's daughter save them all. The timer hit 15 minutes. Reese was sweating. Her fingers never stopped moving. 10 minutes. Reese, almost there. 5 minutes. Reese, I've got it, there. She hit enter with force, triumphant. The console screen flashed. Red, 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 then green. Meltdown sequence aborted. Reactor stable. All systems nominal. The timer stopped. Froze at 2 minutes and 43 seconds. The entire engineering crew released a collective breath they'd been holding. Some collapsed. Some cried. Some just stared at the screen in disbelief. Reese sat back, exhausted, covered in blood and ash and the residue of violence. She looked at Thornton. "We did it. You did it. I just finally backed the right horse." She laughed, tired, relieved. Then she was moving again. Back to him. Field dressing his wound properly, calling for a medical team on the emergency channel. Help was coming. The Roosevelt was safe. The reactor was stable. The threat neutralized. And 31 years of lies were about to come to light. Thornton closed his eyes, not dying, just resting. For the first time in decades, the weight was gone. The guilt, the shame, the debt. Danny Kincaid's daughter had saved them all, just like her father would have. The circle was complete. The USS Theodore Roosevelt limped into port under emergency power. Gray smoke still rose from several sections. Damage control teams swarmed her decks like ants on a wounded giant. Coast Guard cutters flanked her. F-18s circled overhead. Norfolk Naval Base had gone into full lockdown. No one in, no one out. Not until they understood what had happened. In the Roosevelt's makeshift triage center, converted from the officer's wardroom, Reese sat on a folding chair. A Navy corpsman was trying to clean the burns on her arms. She wasn't paying attention to him. Her eyes were fixed on the surgical bay across the compartment, where they'd taken Colonel Wade Thornton 2 hours ago. The bullet had entered high on his shoulder, missed the subclavian artery by millimeters, missed the lung by less. He'd lost blood, a lot of blood, but he was stable. That's what the surgeon had said. Stable. Reese hated that word. Stable. It was what doctors said when they didn't want to promise you'd see someone alive again. Her hands were shaking. Had been shaking since the adrenaline wore off. Since the reality of what she'd done settled in. 12 men dead by her hand, maybe 13 counting the ones in the medical bay explosion. She'd stopped counting at some point. She'd killed before. Fallujah, Ramadi, Kandahar. But never like this, never this many, never this close. The knife work, the hand-to-hand, blood on her hands, literal blood. Still under her fingernails despite 3 washings. "Ma'am, I need you to hold still." The corpsman's voice, young, concerned. She focused on him, 20 years old maybe, barely old enough to drink, old enough to dine on a carrier deck. "Sorry." She held still. Let him finish bandaging. The burns weren't bad. First degree. They'd heal. The barotrauma had ruptured blood vessels in her eyes, made her look like something from a horror movie. That would heal too. The scars on her soul, those would take longer. Marcus Hale was in custody. NCIS had taken him off the ship in chains. Shoulder wound stabilized. Conscious. Already lawyered up according to the scuttlebutt. Already claiming he was operating under classified orders. Already trying to spin the narrative. Let him try. Reese had recorded everything. Her tactical vest had a body camera. Standard contractor equipment. She'd learned that lesson in Iraq. Always document, always have proof, because the truth has a way of getting buried under official reports and redacted files. Not this time. This time the truth was digital, encrypted, backed up to 3 separate servers. Hale's confession about Mogadishu, about the conspiracy, about her father, all of it recorded, all of it admissible. The surgical bay doors opened. A doctor emerged, still in her surgical gown, blood on it. She looked tired, worn, but she was smiling. Reese was on her feet before she realized she'd moved. Colonel Thornton. Stable, the surgery went well. We removed the bullet, repaired the damage. No major vessels compromised. He'll need physical therapy, 6 months minimum, but he'll recover fully. The relief hit Reese like a wave. Her knees went weak. She sat back down, hard. Can I see him? He's in recovery, unconscious. Won't be awake for several hours, but yes, 5 minutes. Reese nodded, stood, followed the doctor into the recovery area. Thornton looked small in the hospital bed. Strange. He'd always seemed larger than life. The uniform, the rank, the authority. Strip that away, and he was just a man. 58 years old. Gray hair, lines on his face carved by 3 decades of command decisions. A man who'd taken a bullet meant for her. A man who'd finally, after 31 years, paid his debt to her father. Reese pulled a chair close to the bed, sat, took his hand. It was warm, alive, his pulse steady under her fingers. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly, knowing he couldn't hear, saying it anyway. Taking that round, you didn't owe me anything. But that wasn't true. He'd owed Danny Kincaid, and debts like that don't die when the creditor does. They pass down, generation to generation, until someone settles the account. Thornton had settled it, in blood, the old way, the honest way. Thank you, Reese whispered, for finally telling the truth, for finally standing up. My father would have, her voice cracked, he would have forgiven you. He would have understood. She sat with him for the full 5 minutes. Then the doctor came back. Time to go. Other patients needed treatment. The wounded, the traumatized, the survivors. Reese stood, squeezed Thornton's hand once more, then left him to heal. 5 days later, Reese walked into the Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth, still in Norfolk, still on lockdown. The investigation was ongoing. NCIS, FBI, Department of Defense, Inspector General. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted to know how terrorists had gotten onto a U.S. aircraft carrier. The truth was coming out, slowly, painfully, like pulling shrapnel from a wound. Marcus Hale had cracked. Not immediately, not easily, but when faced with video evidence of his confession, when faced with ballistic evidence from Danny Kincaid's autopsy that had been archived and now re-examined, when faced with digital forensics showing money transfers from offshore accounts linked to Iraqi intelligence circa 1993, he'd cracked and started naming names. 4 Pentagon officials so far, 2 senators, 1 defense contractor, CEO. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had imagined. Mogadishu hadn't been an intelligence failure. It had been an intelligence sabotage. Deliberate, calculated. 18 Americans sacrificed to justify a policy decision. The story was breaking on every news channel. Congressional hearings announced. Investigations launched. Heads rolling at the highest levels of government. And at the center of it all was Staff Sergeant Daniel Kincaid, the Ranger who'd discovered the truth, who'd confronted a traitor, who'd died for it. His name was finally being spoken, his service finally being recognized. his sacrifice finally being honored. Reese found Thornton's room on the third floor, private room, flag officer courtesy. She knocked, heard his voice from inside. Strong, clear. Enter. He was sitting up in bed, arm in a sling, color back in his face, reading a tablet. Probably reports. Officers never stopped working, even when their bodies demanded rest. He looked up, saw her, smiled. Petty Officer Kincaid, good to see you on your feet. Good to see you conscious, sir. She closed the door behind her, pulled a chair close to the bed. The same configuration as 5 days ago, roles reversed. He'd been unconscious then. Now he was watching her with sharp, assessing eyes. I hear you've been busy, he said, giving statements, providing evidence, making a lot of powerful people very nervous. Just telling the truth, sir. The truth. He set the tablet aside. Dangerous thing, truth. Gets people killed. Gets careers destroyed. Gets comfortable lies dragged into the light where they can't hide anymore. My father died for the truth. Seemed wrong to let it stay buried. Thornton was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. Then he reached for the drawer in his bedside table, pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed, the kind of paper that predates email. Handwritten address on the front. Captain Wade Thornton, no address, no postage, just the name. Your father gave me this, Thornton said quietly. The night before Mogadishu, October 2nd, 1993, we were doing final prep. Weapons check, radio protocols, the usual. He held the envelope like it was made of glass. Danny pulled me aside, handed me this, said if anything happened to him, I should open it. Give it to you when you were old enough to understand. His voice cracked. I've been carrying it for 31 years, waiting for the right time, waiting until you were ready. He held it out to her. Reese stared at it, her father's handwriting. His hand had touched this paper. His words were inside. A message from the grave, from before the grave, from when he was still alive and still her father and still had a future. Her hands were shaking when she took it. Sir, I don't know if I can. You can. You're the strongest person I've ever met. Stronger than me, stronger than him. You can read it. Reese opened the envelope carefully. The glue had dried decades ago. The paper inside was thin, fragile, covered in her father's precise handwriting. She began to read. Wade, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. That's okay, I knew the risks. We all did. This job doesn't come with guarantees, just a commitment to do the right thing no matter the cost. I need you to do something for me. Find my daughter. Her name is Reese, Reese Elizabeth Kincaid. She'll be 6 months old next week. She won't remember me. That's the hardest part. Knowing she'll grow up without a father, without knowing who I was, what I believed in. Tell her I loved her. Tell her every decision I made was thinking about her future, about the world I wanted her to inherit, a world where good people stand up against bad people, where courage means something, where service matters buzz. Tell her I wasn't a hero. Heroes are for movies. I was just a soldier who tried to do his job with honor, who tried to protect his brothers, who believed that some things are worth dying for. But more than that, I need you to teach her. Teach her to be strong. Teach her to be brave. Teach her that being a protector isn't about wearing a uniform. It's about choosing every day to stand between the wolves and the sheep, even when it costs everything. I know I'm asking a lot. You've got your own life, your own path, but I'm asking anyway, because you're my brother, and brothers take care of each other's families. That's the code. That's what makes us more than just soldiers. If she grows up to be anything like her mother, she'll be smart and stubborn and impossible to manage. But if she has even a little bit of me in her, she'll also be a fighter, a guardian, someone who doesn't back down when things get hard. Be there for her, Wade, even if it's from a distance, even if she never knows your name. Watch over her, keep her safe. And when the time comes when she's ready, give her this letter. Let her know her father thought about her in his final hours. Let her know she was loved. Rangers lead the way. That's our motto. Lead by example. Lead with courage. Lead even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. I'm scared right now, brother. Scared I won't see my little girl grow up. Scared I won't be there for her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. Scared she'll think I abandoned her. But I'm going anyway, because that's what we do. We go toward the danger so others don't have to. We stand in the gap. We pay the price. Take care of yourself. Take care of my family. And if you get the chance, tell them all I went down fighting, that I didn't quit, that I held the line until the end. Your brother Danny Reese's vision blurred. Tears streamed down her face. Hot, unchecked. The paper shook in her hands, her father's voice. After 31 years of silence, she could hear him, could feel him, could know with absolute certainty that he'd loved her, that he'd thought about her, that in his final hours she'd been on his mind. He asked you to watch over me, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, that's why you were there, on the Roosevelt, surprise inspection. You weren't checking security standards, you were checking on me. Thornton nodded. I've been doing it for years, quietly, making sure you got into good postings, making sure you had opportunities, making sure no one blocked your path because of who your father was. The clean record, the lack of commendations. You were hiding me. I was protecting you. The same people who killed Danny are still out there, still powerful, still dangerous. I couldn't let them know his daughter was following in his footsteps. Couldn't let them know you were asking questions, investigating, getting close to the truth. Reese looked at him, this man who'd carried guilt for 3 decades, who'd been a silent guardian, who'd finally, when it mattered most, stood up and fought. You kept your promise to him. I tried, I failed a lot, but I tried. Thornton's eyes were wet. Your father was the best man I ever knew, the best soldier, the best friend. He deserved better than what he got, better than a bullet in the back and a cover-up in a lie that lasted 31 years. He's getting better now, thanks to you. No, thanks to you. You're the one who wouldn't let it go, who kept digging, who made them face the truth. I just finally found the courage to back you up. Reese carefully folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, held it close to her chest. The most precious thing she'd ever been given. Her father's love, made tangible, made real. What happens now? She asked. Now, Thornton smiled, tired but genuine. Now we watch the dominoes fall. Hale goes to trial. The others go to trial. The truth comes out. Justice gets served. And your father gets the honor he deserved all along. 10 days later, Reese stood in her dress whites on the flight deck of the USS Theodore Roosevelt. The carrier was still damaged, still scarred, but operational, symbolically important. The ceremony needed to happen here, where the truth had been revealed, where the cover-up had ended. 300 sailors in formation, officers and enlisted, dress uniforms. Ranks upon ranks of white and blue, the American flag snapping in the wind overhead. Fleet Admiral Patricia Hendricks stood at the podium, 4 stars on her collar. Commander of Naval Forces Atlantic, the highest-ranking woman in the Navy. Her voice carried across the flight deck through speakers. We gather today to right a wrong, to correct an injustice that has stood for 31 years, to honor a soldier who died not just in service to his country, but in defense of the truth. Reese stood at attention, front row, next to Colonel Wade Thornton in his dress uniform, arms still in a sling but present, unwavering. Behind them in seats of dishonor were the accused, Marcus Hale in handcuffs, 4 Pentagon officials, 2 former senators, all awaiting trial, but all required to bear witness to this moment. Staff Sergeant Daniel Kincaid's 75th Ranger Regiment was killed on October 3, 1993, in Mogadishu, Somalia. For 31 years, his death was attributed to enemy action. For 31 years, that was a lie. Hendricks's voice was steel, unforgiving. Daniel Kincaid was murdered by a fellow soldier, an officer he trusted, a man who had sold intelligence to enemy forces, a traitor who killed to protect his secret. The gathered assembly was silent. Absolute. This wasn't a typical ceremony. This was a reckoning. In the course of his final mission, Staff Sergeant Kincaid discovered evidence of this betrayal. He confronted the traitor. He attempted to bring the truth to light, and he was executed for it. Hendricks paused. Let the weight of that statement settle. His death was covered up, his sacrifice minimized, his family lied to, and for 31 years the truth remained buried. She looked directly at Reese. Until his daughter refused to let it stay buried. The Admiral gestured. An aide stepped forward carrying a velvet case. By order of the President of the United States in an act of Congress, Staff Sergeant Daniel Kincaid is hereby awarded the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. The citation was read. The full account, Danny Kincaid's discovery of the betrayal, his confrontation with Hale, his final stand covering his team's retreat, his murder, all of it. Unredacted, uncensored, the truth. When the citation finished, Admiral Hendricks lifted the Medal of Honor from its case. The light blue ribbon, the star, the highest award for valor America can bestow. Petty Officer Reese Kincaid front and center. Reese marched forward, each step measured, precise. She stopped before the Admiral, saluted. The Admiral returned the salute, then spoke quietly, just for Reese. Your father would be proud of you. We all are. She placed the medal around Reese's neck. The ribbon settled against her uniform. The weight of it was nothing. The meaning was everything. On behalf of a grateful nation and with apologies for 31 years of injustice, I present you with your father's Medal of Honor. May his sacrifice never be forgotten. May his courage inspire us. May his truth guide us. The Admiral stepped back, saluted, formal, full honors. Every officer on that flight deck saluted. 300 hands raised in unison, holding, honoring. Reese's eyes blurred, but she held her salute. Stood straight, strong, the way her father had taught her through example, through legacy, through a letter carried for 31 years. The salutes held for a full minute, then dropped. Admiral Hendricks turned to the assembly. This young woman saved this ship, saved this base, saved countless lives when terrorists attempted to destroy the Roosevelt and trigger a reactor meltdown. She fought alone, outnumbered, against trained operatives, and she won. The Admiral's voice rose, carried across the deck. But more than that, she proved that the truth matters, that honor matters, that no rank, no power, no conspiracy can bury justice forever. Eventually someone stands up. Someone says no. Someone fights back. She looked at Reese again. Petty Officer Kincaid is that someone. She is her father's daughter, a protector, a guardian, a warrior who fights not for glory, but for what's right. Applause erupted. Not polite ceremony applause, real applause. Thunderous. 300 sailors showing respect, showing gratitude, showing that the Navy takes care of its own, even 31 years late. After the ceremony, after the photographs and the handshakes and the endless stream of well-wishers, Reese found a quiet corner of the ship, a small observation deck overlooking Norfolk Bay. The water was gray, choppy, storm clouds gathering on the horizon. She pulled out her father's letter. Read it again. The words no less powerful for repetition. I hope I made you proud, Dad, she whispered to the wind. I tried to do what you asked, tried to be strong, tried to be brave, tried to be a protector. The medal hung around her neck, heavy with history, with sacrifice, with honor earned in blood. She thought about the young sailors she'd saved, the engineering crew who'd been hostages, the civilians on the base who would have died in a reactor meltdown, the families who still had their loved ones because she'd stood in the gap. That was the job. That was what her father had understood. Being a protector meant choosing to stand, choosing to fight, choosing to pay the price so others didn't have to. She understood now. Finally, completely. This was her calling, her purpose. Not revenge for her father's death, but carrying forward his mission, his commitment, his unwavering dedication to protecting the innocent. I'll keep going, she said. I'll keep fighting. I'll keep the promise. The wind carried her words out over the water, out to wherever spirits go when bodies fall, out to wherever her father waited. 2 weeks later, Reese sat across from Wade Thornton at a small cafe in downtown Norfolk. Civilian clothes, off-duty, 2 people sharing coffee. No ranks, no formality, just survivors talking. Thornton looked better, color in his face, moving the injured shoulder more. Physical therapy was working. He'd probably never have full range of motion again. But he'd live, he'd function, he'd serve. Medical board wants to retire me, he said, sipping black coffee. Full pension, honorable discharge, put me out to pasture. And, and I told them to go to hell. I've got 5 years until mandatory retirement. I'm using them. Reese smiled. Good. The Navy needs officers who give a damn about truth. Speaking of which, Thornton pulled a manila folder from his bag, set it on the table between them. This came across my desk yesterday, classified, eyes only. But since we're both material witnesses in about 15 federal cases, we have access. Reese opened the folder. Inside were dossiers, photographs, intelligence reports, names and faces of 23 individuals, all connected to the Mogadishu conspiracy, all still active, still operating, still dangerous. Hale's network, Thornton said. His handlers, his contacts, his accomplices, they're scattered across DoD intelligence agencies, defense contractors. A whole ecosystem of corruption that's been operating for 3 decades. Reese read through the files, memorizing faces, names, connections. NCIS is putting together a task force, Thornton continued. Special Investigations Unit, hunting down everyone connected to the conspiracy, making sure this rot gets cut out completely. He paused, met her eyes. They want you to lead it. Reese looked up from the files. Me. You're the one who broke this open. You're the one with tactical experience. You're the one who understands how these people think, how they operate, how they hide. I'm a petty officer, an E5. I can't lead a task force. You can if they promote you, which they will. Direct commission to O3, lieutenant. Effective immediately pending completion of officer candidate school. Thornton smiled. Bureaucracy can move fast when admirals and senators are involved. Reese sat back, processing, a task force, hunting the people who'd killed her father, who'd killed 17 other soldiers, who'd spent 3 decades hiding behind classified files and official lies. And you, she asked? Me, I'm too old to kick in doors, but I can read files, connect dots, run operations from a desk. They offered me advisor role, full access, tactical support. He leaned forward. We'd be partners, you in the field, me in the shadows, hunting ghosts, bringing them to justice. Reese looked at the medal on her uniform, at her father's Medal of Honor that she'd been granted permission to wear on special occasions. She thought about his letter, his final request, to be a protector, to stand in the gap, to fight for what's right. This was that fight, extended, expanded. A chance to finish what her father started, to clean out the corruption, to make sure no more soldiers died because of traitors in positions of trust. She looked at Thornton, this man who'd finally found his courage, who'd finally stood up, who'd finally become the person her father believed he could be. When do we start? Thornton grinned. Monday, 0600, NCIS field office. They shook hands across the table. A pact, a partnership, a continuation of a mission that started 31 years ago in a Mogadishu alley. Reese's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Unknown number. Encrypted message. She opened it. The words on the screen made her blood run cold. Congratulations on your father's honor. Unfortunate you'll share his fate. The truth dies with you. Gemini. Reese showed the screen to Thornton. His face went pale. Gemini Protocol, he said quietly. I've heard that name. Deep Black Operations. Cold War era. Assassination program. Officially disbanded in 1989. Apparently not disbanded. Apparently not. Thornton looked around the cafe, at the other customers, the barista, the people on the street outside. We need to move, now. They stood, left money on the table, walked toward the door. Reese's instincts were screaming. The same instincts that had kept her alive in Fallujah, in Kabul, on the Roosevelt. Something was wrong, something was watching. They stepped out onto the street. Late afternoon, overcast, storm coming. Thornton's car was parked half a block away. They walked toward it, casual, unhurried, but alert. Reese's eyes swept rooftops, windows, parked vehicles, looking for threats, for anomalies, for anything out of place. There, 6 stories up, opposite corner, a glint of light, brief, gone. Scope reflection. Wade, sniper, 6 o'clock high. Thornton didn't turn, didn't react, just kept walking. Copy, your call. Reese thought fast. They were exposed. No cover between here and the car. If the sniper wanted them dead, they'd already be dead. The shot was easy, less than 200 meters, clear line of sight. But the shot hadn't come, which meant this was a message, a warning, a promise. Keep walking, get to the car. They're not shooting today. How do you know? Because I'm my father's daughter, and I know how these people think. They want us scared, want us looking over our shoulders, want us to make a mistake. They reached the car, got in. Thornton started the engine, pulled into traffic. Reese looked back. The rooftop was clear. No reflection, no sign anyone had been there, but someone had been. She knew it, felt it, the weight of eyes on her, the sensation of being in crosshairs. This isn't over, she said. No, it's just beginning. Thornton drove his eyes checking mirrors, looking for tails, for threats. The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. Hale was middle management. Gemini is something else, something worse. Then we hunt them. They'll be hunting us too. Reese touched the metal through her uniform shirt, felt its weight, its meaning, its promise. Let them. My father faced his hunters, stood his ground. I'll do the same. Thornton smiled, grim but genuine. Rangers lead the way. Rangers lead the way, Reese echoed. They drove into the gathering storm. 2 protectors, 2 guardians, 2 soldiers carrying forward a mission that had started 3 decades ago and would continue until every traitor was exposed, every lie revealed, every ghost brought into the light. On a rooftop in downtown Norfolk, a figure in black tactical gear broke down a rifle, stowed it in a case, pulled out a phone, typed a message. Targets acquired. Surveillance active, awaiting orders. The reply came seconds later. Maintain observation. No termination until task force activates. We need to know who else they recruit. Gemini protocol remains active. The figure acknowledged. Packed up. Disappeared from the rooftop like smoke and wind. Below, the city continued its evening routine, unaware that a war was being fought in its shadows. A war between those who protected the truth and those who buried it, between light and darkness, between honor and corruption. And at the center of that war was Reese Kincaid, 27 years old, daughter of a hero, warrior in her own right, protector, guardian, silent sentinel standing a watch over a nation that didn't even know it needed protecting. Her father had died for the truth. She would live for it, fight for it, hunt for it, and if necessary, she would die for it too, because that's what protectors do. They stand in the gap. They pay the price. They keep the promise. No matter the cost, the storm broke over Norfolk. Rain hammered down. Thunder rolled across the bay. Lightning split the darkening sky. And somewhere in that darkness, Reese Kincaid prepared for war. The hunt had begun.